الأساتذة وواصل بقية الكلام بالإنجليزية إن شاء الله. The topic we'll be discussing over here within the coming next that is 15 or 20 minutes. Rather, we usually learn that usually even it's not enough in order to warm up a professor. But anyway, we are always ruled by the constraints of time, and we have to take care of them. So it is the Anthropocene, Sustainability and Literature, Perspectives of Recount and Reports in Arabic Literary Traditions. First, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this grand initiative towards addressing this aspect of the humanity at present time in terms of digitalization and sustainable development issues, which has turned into universal schemes spearheaded by different world organizations, including UNESCO, as well as ASISCO and several other Arab and Islamic countries. So, going to the perspectives, it will first the prologue, the multiverse man narrative. What is the multiverse man narrative? Seconded by the cosmology in Islamic perspective, as represented by Ibn Arabi, Mu'ayyiduddin al-Urdi, Nasruddin al-Tusi, Qutbuddin al-Shirazi, Ibn Shatir, Muhammad Ghaus Jawalir from the Indian subcontinent. And the third perspective will be related to the scheme of universe, which has been very significant in terms of the history of civilizations, projecting man, where the paradigm shifted from the Ptolemy's paradigm, that is the non-Earth central cosmos, into the cosmology of Nasruddin Tusi, that was Earth-centered or man-centered. Then the ecosophy, as represented by Al-Maqdisi and Ibn Tufayl, will be having some passing remarks to Indian philosophy, especially in regard to pantheism and the Shabda Brahma, because these two points basically have played very significant role in formulating our worldview centered around man in that grand scheme of the cosmos. We'll be making references to the Europeans, especially William Reuchert and Lawrence Beall, in regard to eco-criticism, green literature, which aims primarily at preserving the resources for the coming humanity. That is the very idea of sustainable human existence, sustainable literature. Then the ontological constructs, discourse of nature, multiversal cosmology, Kabbalistic and Indian connections, because that again focuses on simply like certain things like even if we have some letters, some words. So these words, these letters do have some connotations, practical connotations in the grand scheme of things in this universe. So they do have their material yields. Then Ibn Bajjah, some of the dispositions, expositions and thoughts given by Ibn Bajjah. Then Sheikh Muhammad Ghaus Jawaleri from Jawahir al-Khamsa, and that great epoch negatively, which is classified as represented by Anthropocene, the great ecological imbalance, the eco-poetics, eco-criticism and comedy of survival, conclusion, and then bibliography. I think if these slides are shown to the learned audience, it would make much difference in order to grasp the topic in many of its parameters. So may I kindly request the organizers to kindly show the PPT and present, if it is possible.
Pak Denny, bisa dibantu PPT-nya? PPT Dr. Prof.Mohd.Sanaulla. Ya,
That's right. Thank you
تفضل.
very much. So let's start with the first slide. The first slide. So these are the perspectives I have already outlined. The prologue, the cosmology of Ibn Arabi and Al-Urdi, Nasruddin al-Tusi. And the second slide, Kabbalistic and Indian connections, Ibn Bajjah, that is Abin Pace, Sheikh Muhammad Ghaus Gawaliari, especially in his Jawahir al-Khamsa, Anthropocene, the great ecological imbalance, eco-poetics in terms of eco-criticism and comedy of survival, al-Maqdisi, conclusion and bibliography. In the fourth slide, well, that is the basic thing is that what is the position of man in this universe? Because the modern perspective, modern hedonistic, materialistic perspective, consumeristic perspective has turned the humans into something that is present in this world as a subject of consumption. So he has been commodified. Man has turned into something like a commodity. In the grand, that is scheme of things in Islam, that is worldview of Islam, in the grand Islamic worldview, the man happens to be Al-Alam al-Akbar, while the outer world is known as Al-Alam al-Asghar. This is depicted by Ibn Arabi in the first part of this map or the photograph, which has been taken from Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, followed by Qutbuddin Shiraz's depiction of the position of man in this universe in his Tuhfa al-Shahiyya. The significance of this diagram is that man in this universe cannot be classified as a mere representation of a thing that is purely consumerist, which is consumed, which is totally temporal as it is positivist. That is, the positivist perspective is to be negated, fundamentally negated and rejected in Islamic perspectives. Coming to the next slide, again, this has been taken from Ibn Arabi's Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah. Compared to this, we find in modern perspectives of the depiction of or the exposition of Anthropocene or sustainable existence of humans or the man-nature relationship is what has been presented by modern European writers like nature includes all of the universe and man is not only a part of the nature. He is in and up to his neck. The next slide also shows this man and nature relationship. Coming to the next one, that is the centrality of man. In the Odyssey of faith, myths and hermeneutics. So man has to be central. Man stands central in this scheme. Centrality of man. This centrality of man has been depicted as it has been pointed out in this idiom that man or the humans are the Al-Alam al-Asghar, Al-Akbar, while the outer world, the outer universe is the Al-Alam al-Asghar. The multiversal cosmology as alpha and omega of ontology, the percept of continuity and sustainability, stands central to the Arab-Islamic literary schemes, laying greater stress on a harmonious social paradigm and the cohabitation on planet Earth's plurality. So here the primary scheme is that man doesn't stand alone. And the things we usually categorize as the others, that is the othering phenomena, the othering logic, the othering perspective, that is I versus you, or I versus he, I-ness and he-ness and or it-ness. Here, the very notion of othering cannot be substantiated if we are to maintain or plead for the very idea and philosophy of sustainability, sustainable existence, whose alpha and omega, whose zest is to preserve anything that is material in this universe for the posterity, because we don't exist alone in this universe. Rather, there are the other things, and even the other things which we usually classify as a fauna and flora, as animals. They have been in the Islamic paradigm. They have been depicted as umamun amsalukum, umamun amsalukum. So this universe is a combination of, or the habitat of so many Humans are part of this, but humans cannot. So in the introduction, this has been dealt with in greater details. Moving fast to the discourse of nature, Next one, rather after 3 or 4 slides. Next one. Next. Again, next. Something very significant, because this has been dealt by Muslim philosophers, Muslim scientists, and all who plead for the idea of sustainability or sustainable development in modern times. That is the existence. That is the 4 elements. 4 elements. They have been mentioned in the Holy Quran. They occupy a central position in the very idea for philosophizing the man-nature relationship. So al-ma, wal-hawa, wal-nar, wal-turab, these basic elements have been described by the Quran in a number of its verses. And the most significant thing is that all these verses correlate the outer existence, the inner and outer existence to these things. Means there is nothing like the othering philosophy or the othering logic in this paradigm. Moving to the next. The next slide. Well, we find that the Muslim philosophers, while giving a coherent and comprehensive philosophy of sustainability, they have dealt with the properties, the attributes of these elements in relation to humans and human mind. Like, take the example of earth and water. So the tendency is spreading, dropping, body system is skeleton, excretion, feces, sense is touch, that is taste, bodily function, form, mentality, that is torpid, mental state, that is obstinacy, fearfulness, etc. So these schemes just show to us that the Muslim philosophers, as represented in our legacy of literature, they have combined between the human disposition, human mind, and the outer existence. Human mind and outer existence. So here we have the mind-body combination, or the material cognition and the materiality clubbed together while projecting the very idea of sustainability. Moving to the next one. Next one. So here again, it's being extended as the fire is related to hot, dry substance, air is related to hot, wet substance, water is related to cold, wet substance, and earth is related to cold and dry substance. while dealing with that relationship, grand relationship between mind and body, or the spiritual aspect of being with the material aspect of being. The next one. The next slide. Multiversal cosmology. This multiversal cosmology has been outlined in our literary, in our scientific traditions, theological traditions, or philosophical traditions by Imam Ghazali, Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, and many others. Here you can find that Al-Ghazali, in his Coherence of Philosophers, that is Tahafut al-Falasifa, defends the Asharite doctrine of a created universe that is temporarily finite against the Aristotelian doctrine of an eternal universe. In doing so, he proposed the model theory of possible worlds, arguing that their actual world is the best of all possible worlds from among the alternative timelines and world histories that God cannot have possibly created. So here the primary thing is that what we have at our disposition, at our hands in modern times, right now, in terms of the outer existence, this is to be taken as the best, and this is to be preserved. So what we are having in terms of mental faculty or the material faculty that we are having, this is to be preserved and sustained for the posterity. And this is the very idea of sustainability. هذا هو المفهوم الأساسي للاستدامة. يعني ما نملكه من الأشياء، من المواهب، من الأفكار، من الآراء، من الموروث الإنساني، مضافا إلى الموروث المادي الذي يحيط بنا، هذا يجب أن نحافظ عليه ونبقيه للآخر. يعني وهذا في الأساس هو قضية الاستدامة. وهذا رأي نجده لدى الفلاسفة المسلمين القدامى مثل الغزالي والإمام فخر الدين الرازي والآخرين. The next slide. Well, this is something very typical. This is something very typical in the very scheme that is the idea of sustainability in Islamic perspective. That is khawas al-huruf. Khawas al-huruf, the properties of the words. Sometimes we would be saying that, or the property of sound. What is the property of sound? Not simply related to the that is the material aspect. So sound is something measured, sound is something, it's a natural phenomenon, it's a material phenomenon. But we have, in our history, we have a philosophy that looks into the properties of the words. This phenomenon that is the spiritual one. Like these words, whether it is alif or ba or ta, these alphabets, they do have their effects. Now, just we can interpret it with the effect of dua. When we utter some dua, it has the effect. So, according to this, there are the sound bits, the language, this language aspect, this sound aspect, which is represented by al-huruf, the letters. They do have their effects. Sometimes they do have their inherent effects. And this has been propounded by several philosophers, chiefly in India, among the Sufis, like Muhammad Gawarieri. And also in Arabic, we have the philosopher Ibn Bajjah in this regard. خواص الحروف، يعني كيف أن الحروف، يعني هذه الأشياء التي نعتبرها روحية فقط، كيف أن لها ارتباط بالظاهر، بالفلسفة الوضعية، بالوضع، بالمادة، يعني هو المردود الحسي. يعني هناك الروحي، هناك الملفوظ الروحي الذي له مردود حسي، وهذا يتمثل في نظرية خواص الحروف. وهذه النظرية نجدها لدى العديد من الحكماء والمتصوفة في الهند وغيرها. في شبه القارة الهندية نجد هذا لدى الشيخ محمد غوث الواليري في كتبه العديدة، وكذلك في العربية لدى ابن باجة، الفيلسوف الكبير ابن باجة. So that could be part of that could be connected with the Kabbalistic and Indian connections, and also in the deeper Indian perspectives that could be related to the idea of the Shabd Brahma. يعني هذا المبدأ يمكن معالجته في سياق فلسفة الهند القديمة المتمثلة في شبد براهما. The next slide. The next one. ابن باجة في كتابه كتاب النفس هو عالج هذا وأشار إلى هذه النظرية. Next. محمد غوث قواليري. Again, he has propounded this theory that is how the words, how the mental phenomenon, how the utterances are related to the outer world, that we have their manifestations, the presentations over there. Next. Now, we were just passing through this great ecological imbalance that is Anthropocene. This has been described in the Holy Quran as ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعد الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. يعني من هو المسؤول عن هذه الوضعية، عن الفساد؟ ما هو الفساد؟ يعني عندما تختل الموازين، هذه الموازين بين الإنسان، بين ظاهر الإنسان وباطنه، بين العقل والمادة، المادة في جسد الإنسان، في جسم الإنسان، والمادة الخارجية، يعني العالم الخارجي، يختل هذا الميزان. من هو المسؤول؟ ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. القرآن يقول بأن الإنسان هو المسؤول عن هذا. So it is the humans, we are responsible for this. Why you are responsible for this? لماذا نحن المسؤولون؟ لأننا نستهلك فوق ما نستحقه. We consume, we annihilate, we use, we misuse, we exploit. Man, because of this, we have this disaster. This disaster is the ecological imbalance, which is known as Anthropocene. The next one. But this idea is augmented in the ahadith, in a number of ahadith. يعني هذا المبدأ نجده مؤيدا في العديد من الأحاديث النبوية الشريفة، بالإضافة إلى الآيات القرآنية التي أشرنا إليها، حيث أن المبدأ القرآني هو يعني الإنسان لا يعيش وحده في هذا الكون، والإنسان ليس أمة فقط، بل الإنسان الأمة، الإنسان أمة بين أمم أمثاله، يعني النباتات، الجمادات، الحيوانات كلها أمم. This is the resist of the sustainability, the idea of sustainability in Islamic traditions. Next. And also كلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا. Ecopoetics. Now, ecopoetics, what is ecopoetics? It is as you have to have this idea of sustainability. The first, you have to be aware that this is the issue. The world is at your disposal, but you are responsible to preserve it. The world is at our disposal, but we have the responsibility to preserve it for the posterity. So we should not be consuming each and everything. We should not be annihilating each and everything. We should not be disturbing this balance between man and nature, resources, either at the individual fronts or the societal fronts or the government fronts. So this is very much like this actually constitutes the idea of the ecopoetics. And the critical awareness of this is known as ecocritics or ecocriticism. And when this is represented in literature, it is green literature or eco literature, which focuses itself to the core of the idea of sustainability. The next slide, please. Well, again, in modern times, as I have pointed out, now ecocriticism has come up as a great call, very powerful call to preserve nature for the posterity. For the posterity. In the domain of literature, this has been spearheaded by a number of philosophers, critics, and men of letters like William Ruckert, Joseph Meeker, and others. They have produced very powerful literature. في زمننا هذا نجد هناك هذا الاتجاه القوي للاستدامة. الاستدامة في الثقافة، الاستدامة في الكلمة، الاستدامة في الأدب، الاستدامة في النقد، يعني الرواة النقدية، المذاهب النقدية. هذه المذاهب النقدية يعني نجدها لدى العديد من الأدباء والمفكرين الجدد من المغرب في مقدمتهم ويليام ريكرت وجوزيف ميكر وآخرين. Next one. I'm just winding it up. Next one. طيب هذه النقطة هامة. There's something substantial I must be pointed out, deliberating upon that briefly, as we know we're just running short of time. I'm aware of this. Again, in our grand civilization, in heydays of Muslim culture, we know that the Muslim scientists, philosophers, men of letters, poets, critics, they have dealt with a plethora of subjects related to that relation between mind and matter. Mind-matter relationship has been central to our discourses in the Middle Ages. So even this idea, I have found, even this idea of sustainability, the idea of sustainability in terms of the eco-consciousness, فكرة الاستدامة في سياق
محمد نبينا بنور هدينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع المدينة من صلى صلاته واتحلى بصفاته يا بخت اللي في ظله ماشي يشفع له في مماته محمد نبينا
في سياق الفساد البيئي، في سياق الفساد البيئي، لأن الفساد البيئي يؤدي إلى الفساد في الذهن، الفساد الفكري، الرؤية الفكرية، حيث أن الإنسان لا يحافظ تراثه مثلا، وهذا من يعني مما أخذ على مشروع الرقمنة، على فكرة مما أخذ على مشروع الرقمنة أن هذا المشروع يزيل الإنسان عن مركزه الأساسي، حيث أن الرقمنة تحول الإنسان إلى أرقام، معنى ذلك أن ليس هناك زيد وعمرو وبكر بكل خصوصياتهم، وإنما هناك 1 و2 و3 و4 و0. Digitalization. Well, sometimes I do project digitalization I say that, well, in our ultimate analysis, the big trouble with the digitalization is that, or this culture is that, you turn each and everything into digits. So what's wrong? One might be asking, what's wrong with if someone just turns the things into digits? I say that the wrong is that when you say John, when you say Abdullah, when you say Aisha, they're individuals. If you turn these individuals into digits, into 0, into 1, 2, and 3, and 4, you are actually playing havoc with their identity. أين الهوية الشخصية الذاتية الفكرية الوجودية لزيد وعمر وبكر إذا ما حولنا كلهم إلى أرقام. طيب إذن البقاء، هناك هذا الكتاب الشهير ألفه المقدسي